When you stop reaching out, something powerful begins to shift in a man's mind. At first, he may not show it. He may act busy, distracted, or completely unaffected. But silence has a sound, and that sound echoes loudly in his thoughts. When the messages stop, when the calls no longer come, when your name doesn't light up his screen, he notices. Even if he pretends he doesn't, silence creates emotional pressure and curiosity in a man's mind in ways that are deeper than most people realize. When communication suddenly slows down or stops, it interrupts a pattern he has grown used to. The human brain is wired to notice change. When something consistent disappears, it immediately tries to understand why. If you were someone who regularly checked in, shared thoughts, sent messages, or simply made your presence known, that rhythm became familiar to him. The moment that rhythm breaks, his mind starts searching for answers. At first, he may assume you are busy. He may tell himself it's nothing. But as time passes and the silence continues, curiosity begins to grow. Questions start forming quietly in the background of his thoughts. Why hasn't she reached out? Did something change? Did I miss something? Is she upset or is she pulling away? Even if he does not voice these questions, they exist. Curiosity is powerful because it demands attention. The less information he has, the more his imagination fills in the gaps. Emotional pressure builds because uncertainty is uncomfortable. When someone knows where they stand, there is stability. When they don't, there is tension. That tension pushes him to think more than he did before. He may check his phone more often. He may reread old conversations. He may replay recent interactions, analyzing tone, words, and moments he didn't pay much attention to at the time. Silence forces reflection because there is no new input to distract him. The mind also tends to value what feels less accessible. When attention is always available, it can unintentionally be taken for granted. When that attention becomes limited, its value increases. Scarcity heightens awareness. He begins to notice the space where your energy used to be. That awareness creates a subtle emotional pressure that grows the longer the silence lasts. Curiosity and pressure together create focus. Instead of casually engaging, he becomes mentally invested in understanding what happened. Silence shifts the dynamic from comfort to uncertainty, and uncertainty often awakens emotions that routine keeps hidden. Distance often increases realization of your value in ways that closeness sometimes cannot. When you are consistently present in someone's life, your effort, your energy, and your care can slowly become part of their normal routine. Not because they do not appreciate you, because familiarity has a way of softening awareness. What is always there does not demand urgent attention. It feels secure, stable, expected. But when distance enters the picture, that sense of certainty is shaken, and the mind begins to reassess what it once viewed as ordinary. When you stop reaching out and create space, he is left alone with his own thoughts. Without your regular messages, your encouragement, your laughter, or your emotional support, there is a noticeable gap. That gap becomes a reminder of what you contributed. The mind naturally compares the present moment with the past. He may think about how conversations used to flow, how you showed up during stressful times, how you celebrated his wins, or how you simply listened. In your absence, those memories become clearer and more vivid. Distance removes distraction. When you were constantly interacting, he may not have paused to measure the depth of your impact. But once the interaction decreases, the contrast highlights your importance. He begins to understand that your presence was not just casual communication, it carried emotional weight. The comfort he felt, the confidence boost he received, the feeling of being understood, these things become more visible when they are no longer readily available. Sometimes distance also triggers a subtle sense of loss. Even if nothing dramatic happened, the reduction of connection can feel like something valuable slipping away. That feeling forces him to evaluate whether he wants to let that distance grow or close the gap. Realization often comes through absence because it creates clarity. Without constant interaction, he sees the dynamic from a wider perspective. Value is not always recognized in moments of convenience. It is often recognized when effort is no longer freely given. When you step back, you allow him to experience life without the consistent access to you. In that space, he may begin to see that what felt normal was actually meaningful. Distance can transform overlooked effort into appreciated value and turn quiet presence into something deeply missed. Ego and pride battle with vulnerability in a man's mind more intensely than most people see on the surface. When you stop reaching out, the first reaction is often internal resistance. His pride steps in quickly, trying to protect his sense of control. The ego whispers that if you wanted to talk, you would. It tells him not to chase, not to appear needy, not to show too much emotion. Pride is concerned with image, with maintaining strength, with avoiding the possibility of rejection. It builds a wall that says, stay calm. Don't react. Let her come to you. But underneath that wall, vulnerability begins to speak. Vulnerability is quieter, yet persistent. It asks different questions. What if she's pulling away? What if I messed up? What if I'm losing something important? This side of him feels the shift more emotionally. It senses the absence, the change in energy, the silence where connection used to be. While pride focuses on appearance, vulnerability focuses on attachment. The struggle between these two forces creates tension. On one side, his ego wants to maintain power and avoid looking like he cares too much. On the other side, his heart may genuinely miss the connection. This internal conflict can delay action. He may hesitate to text first because doing so feels like surrendering control. At the same time, not reaching out feels uncomfortable because the silence is heavy. Men are often conditioned to equate emotional expression with weakness. Because of that conditioning, pride can become louder than vulnerability. Instead of admitting he misses you, he might distract himself. Instead of expressing concern, he might wait. Instead of saying he feels the distance, he might act indifferent. Yet indifference is often a mask. The longer the silence continues, the harder it becomes for pride to ignore what vulnerability keeps highlighting. Eventually, one side grows stronger. If pride wins, he may convince himself that it doesn't matter and remain silent. If vulnerability wins, he will push past discomfort and reach out. That moment reveals emotional depth. Choosing vulnerability requires courage because it risks rejection. It means admitting that the connection matters. When you stop reaching out, you unintentionally activate this internal battle. You remove the comfort of knowing where he stands and force him to confront what he truly feels. The silence does not just create curiosity, it exposes the tension between his need to protect his ego and his desire to stay connected. Your absence forces reflection and self-examination in a way that constant communication never could. When you are regularly present, conversations flow naturally and emotions move in real time. There is little space to pause and analyze because interaction keeps everything active. But when you step back and the communication slows or stops, stillness replaces movement. In that stillness, a man is left alone with his thoughts, and that is where reflection begins. Without new messages to respond to or new moments to share, his mind turns inward. He may start replaying past conversations, thinking about what was said and what was left unsaid. Small details that once seemed insignificant can suddenly feel important. A short reply, a missed call, a change in tone. He begins to examine these moments more closely. Silence removes distraction and creates mental space, and that space invites self-questioning. He may ask himself whether he showed enough appreciation. He may wonder if he became too comfortable. He might reflect on whether he took your effort for granted or assumed you would always be there. Reflection can be uncomfortable because it requires honesty. It challenges the idea that everything was fine and pushes him to consider his own role in the shift. Instead of focusing on what you are doing, he begins to consider what he did or did not do. Absence also highlights emotional dependency in subtle ways. When you are gone, he feels the difference in his daily routine. The good morning text that set the tone for the day, the random message that made him smile, the late night conversation that helped him unwind. These moments may seem small, but together they form emotional connection. When they disappear, he notices how much they contributed to his sense of comfort and stability. Self-examination often leads to clarity. He starts to define what the connection truly meant to him. Was it casual or was it meaningful? Was he investing fully or just enjoying the benefits of your presence? These questions surface naturally because silence demands answers. Without your consistent energy, he cannot rely on momentum to carry the relationship forward. He has to decide whether he wants to make an effort or let the distance grow. Your absence becomes a mirror. It reflects his priorities, his level of emotional maturity, and his willingness to take responsibility. In that quiet space, he confronts not just the loss of communication, but the truth about how deeply he values the connection and what he is prepared to do about it.